Hello again, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of Sportsbook Confidential. My name is John Sullivan, and I'm coming to you live from the FingerLakes1.com studios in Seneca Falls, New York. And this little show here is to help you learn and grow as a sports bettor. And I'm going to go through the show probably a little quickly today. It is really hot in here, and obviously no air conditioning while we're recording, so we'll try to make it through as best we can. But thank you for spending some time with me today. I have an interesting show for you today. We're going to talk about sports betting media and then particularly sports betting podcasts. I'm going to talk about some of the consolidation and partnerships that have happened in the last year in sports betting media. And then I'm going to talk about some podcasts that I follow. And then I'm going to end it up with the one podcast that I've learned the most from sports betting about. And the answer will probably surprise some of you that do follow sports betting podcasts. So we'll see what that one is. Also, we've got the weekend in NBA and NHL playoffs. We've got NASCAR at another road course in Sonoma and the Azerbaijan Grand Prix in Formula One. See if Mercedes can bounce back. But before we do any of that, let's do what we always do and update our bankroll. And Helio Castroneves won his fourth Indy 500, and that race always has a ton of value, and it paid off again. For me this week. I picked 8 drivers at a quarter unit each. So I had 1/4 of a unit on Helio Castroneves at 28-1. That is plus $49 to the bankroll. We had 7 other drivers at a quarter unit each. That's minus $12 to the bankroll. And then we had 4 NASCAR drivers in the Coca-Cola 600, which was dominated by the Hendrick cars. The 4 Hendrick cars finished 1, 2, 3, and 4. I had William Byron, who finished 4th. I felt he would be competitive, but Kyle Larson has just dominated in the last 4 or 5 races. He was, I believe, 2nd or 3rd in the road race, the rain road race. But other than that, he's been 1st or 2nd in the last 4 or 5 races. Just amazing domination lately. But that's minus $7 because I had a quarter unit each on all 4 of those drivers. Then we had the Islanders game 1. Was a loss to the Bruins, minus $7. The Hurricanes lost at home to the Tampa Bay Lightning, minus $7. Then we had the Knicks in Game 3, plus 5, and they lost by a lot in that game, minus $7. And then we had the Bucks in Game 4, winner. I think they won that game by about 12. Plus $6 to the bankroll. If you do the math, it's a total of plus $15. I did not have a great weekend betting on the hockey and basketball, but the auto racing did us pretty good. So the new bankroll is $236, and if you divide by 30, as we always do because we try to remain selective, it makes our new bet size $8, so we moved up a little bit. Got to keep trying to improve from our super low point of around $200 of the bankroll. So we're slowly grinding it back up. So hopefully that will continue as we get ready for football. And it'll just be about 4 weeks. In July, I usually start my previews for the NFL. So it's not that far off. So very excited to get back into football. But today we are going to talk about sports betting media. And this is not an exclusive list or a cumulative list. There are many, many, many companies that have been bought and sold and merged and allied with in the sports betting landscape. But these are media companies tied in with gaming companies. And the reason why I'm going to go through this list, I will explain in a second. But obviously, recently, the Vegas Sports and Information Network, which is a channel on satellite radio, plus they have their own website, live streaming, acquired by DraftKings, which is kind of funny because their studio is in the South Point, Las Vegas Sportsbook. Of course, the Action Network was acquired by Better Collective, which is an offshore marketing affiliate company that also acquired Roto Grinders. We have Barstool Sports, branded with Penn Gaming. I know Barstool Sports was acquired by another company, and I'm not sure of all the details there, but Penn Gaming runs the Barstool branded sports books, and they're tied together heavily. We have an ESPN partnership with Caesars, William Hill, and with DraftKings. So ESPN struck a marketing deal with Caesars and William Hill to be the odds provider for their programs. And they also struck a deal with DraftKings to be the fantasy provider for their programming. So that is who they're tied with. And FanDuel, I'm going to put Synergy because a company acquired a majority share in FanDuel that is also involved with TVG and PokerStars. I think it's called Flutter, if I'm not mistaken. I'm not 100% sure. But TVG, of course, is the horse racing network, and PokerStars, of course, is the premier online poker brand in the world. NBC Sports Edge and RotoWorld, NBC Sports acquired RotoWorld a couple years ago, and now NBC Sports Edge is kind of like their insider level subscription service, and they have both betting and fantasy. And of course, you have Fox Bet with Fox Sports, and I don't know if you've ever watched a Fox NASCAR event or an Fox NFL game, and they'll have win Terry Bradshaw's money or win Clint Boyer's money. They have free games to play to get you to sign up at Fox Bet to play these free games to try and win money. And, of course, their ultimate goal is to get you to bet real money and bring money to their Fox Bet Sportsbook. And why do I bring all this up? Well, obviously, the sports betting is becoming more established in the United States. But the fact that all of these major companies, Barstool, ESPN, Fox, NBC, Vegas Sports Information Network, they're all tied to sports books. Why is that important? It's because the content, overwhelming majority of the content that these outlets provide is not going to be good educational content for the average sports bettor. Their goal is to drive recreational sports bettors, uninformed recreational sports bettors, to their betting outlets so they can take advantage of them with parlays and bad odds and bets with very negative expected value. So the reason why I bring all this up is you're not going to get great content on ESPN. You're not going to get great content on the Action Network. You're not going to get great betting content on Barstool Sports. As a matter of fact, they have that one show with Dave Portnoy and Big Cat and Stu Feiner, which is really a parody of like the old sports betting 1-900 number handicapping shows of the 80s and 90s. And I think it's meant to be satire, but I hope nobody takes it seriously. But I certainly wouldn't go there for betting advice. And NBC Sports Network is actually going to fold up shop at the end of the year, and ESPN is going to take over some, if not all, of the NHL rights. So I don't even know if there's going to be an NBC outlet other than online for you to watch any sports betting content. But the point being that they're all affiliated. They all have financial tentacles to sports books, and they basically ultimately want to drive you to their sports book to spend money there, and they don't want you to win. Sports bettors, it's us against the sports book. That's the bottom line. Sports bettors technically should help each other in the grand scheme of things, in my opinion. And it's us against them. It's us against the house. And all of these outlets are working with the house now. So I say don't expect great content from them. I'm not saying there's not ever going to be good snippets of valuable information. Things will fall through the cracks for sure. So let's move on to I have sports betting podcasts, etc. These are a majority of the podcasts that exist now that I check out on either a regular or a semi-regular basis. And I recommend checking these out, and you can decide for yourself if they're worth spending time on or not. And the one that tops the list for me is Bet the Process with Rufus Peabody and Jeff Ma. The reason I picked this one at the top is because it has a longevity to it, It's been, they say 4 seasons. It's been 3 to 4 years. They have some very long podcasts, but I think every one of their podcasts has a snippet of valuable information in it. If you can sit through it and survive it, you will get some valuable information. These are very smart individuals. And other than the fact that they like to name drop, they have good guests on their show, and sometimes they get lost in the weeds, but they do try to ask good questions. And I find it's a valuable podcast worth listening to. I don't listen to it right when it drops, but I usually wait a few days, and then when I have time to listen to it and I can concentrate, because their conversations go off the rails from time to time. The second podcast is actually a pretty new podcast. It's called Circles Off with Rob Pizzola and Johnny. I don't know what Johnny's last name is. He's never said it on the air. They are the owners or partners of an app called BetStamp, and it actually is a decent app. Obviously, they promote the app on their podcast. It is free to use. It's a way to track bets. I don't use it myself, but it is an interesting app, and I think it does have value. If you want to see if you're a winning bettor or if you have closing line value, you beat the closing line, you can just put your bets in the app at the time you make them, and it will automatically track your profit and loss. It will automatically track your closing line value. If you have a plus closing line value, you beat the closing line. Their podcast is concise. I don't know if they're both Canadian, but they're very polite. They seem to. I know Rob's Canadian. They talk about. They set a schedule for their podcast. They talk about what's on their list. They do a very good job of it, and I find that from week to week, this is the one that's worth spending my time on the most. I feel like he will talk about topics of the day, things are going on in sports betting social media, things going on in certain sports, issues with sports books or anything along those lines, things that will happen to up-and-coming sports bettors. When you go from a complete recreational bettor to an informed sports bettor, and you're grinding your way up to be a profitable sports bettor, you're going to find yourself getting limited at a sports book, or you're going to find yourself needing to get more outs. And they'll talk about things like that are going to help you grow as a sports bettor. And I feel like they're coming from a much more advanced perspective than what I am coming from. But I do find from week in and week out, there's definitely something interesting in that particular podcast. So another new podcast that I recommend you check out is Dink Talk. Dink, of course, is Alan Dinkinson. He was immortalized in the movie Lay the Favorite, played by Bruce Willis. And Dink looks nothing like Bruce Willis, but he's a super guy, and he has 30-plus years of professional betting experience. And he does a podcast when he feels like it. It's usually about once a week. Sometimes it's short, like 15 minutes. Sometimes it's longer, like close to an hour. He is a huge hockey fan. He is also a huge wrestling fan. I don't really care for wrestling. So if he talks wrestling, I usually skip those. But he talks to really smart people in the sports betting industry. He talks to a lot of sharp sports bettors. And he asks the right questions. I mean, he's a good listen. I like he gets right to the point. Doesn't waste time. It's definitely worth your less than an hour a week to check out Dink. The Business of Betting podcast has been around for a long time, and it's a very in-depth podcast. It's sponsored by Pinnacle Sports. And Pinnacle, if you're not familiar with that sports book, it's an offshore book that does, for the most part, welcome sharp action. There are a lot of smart people that have been on that podcast. It's got over 200 episodes. It's usually pretty long and technical. So if you have time, if you're going on a road trip or something, it might be worth it. But you might want to cherry pick certain episodes. I do believe that's the podcast that has the 5 questions to ask a sports bettor. They ask every guest, and that's usually a pretty interesting thing to check out. Last Word Cheetah is a brand new show featuring Preston Johnson, a.k.a. the Sports Cheetah. Preston has I think he's a really nice guy, and I think he's really smart. He has a mixed, I don't want to say reputation in the industry for, he is formerly a tout. And he has started this new program that has only aired a couple episodes, and it's on YouTube. And it's a live call-in show, and you can call in. I think it's on at 1 o'clock Pacific, which is 4 o'clock Eastern, and talk to him about the bets you're making or thinking of making, and he walks you through the process. So it's like having a professional sports bettor on speed dial. And I think the concept is really great. It remains to be seen what the end game here is, if he is trying to build, the brand for something else, or if he's going to go back to touting or using this as a gateway to some other business venture. I don't know. Interesting concept. I think it's worth a check out. He's an entertaining guy. He's very smart. He was on ESPN's Daily Wager. Without a doubt, the best person on that show. He's no longer there. Says a lot about where the direction that show's going. The Deep Dive Gambling Podcast is hosted by a guy named Whale Capper. Been involved in the sport. This podcast been heavily involved in sports betting for about 4 years. Another with hundreds of episodes. I think they record every couple of days. It is. I'm sure you will find a treasure trove of information. If you pick through all the episodes. It's not one I listen to regularly, but if somebody I like is going to be on that, I will check it out because I know they'll spend a lot of time and try to get as much information out of a smart person that's on that program. Be Better Bettors is Spankys Podcast. For those of you who don't know who Spanky is, he's a professional sports bettor that is actually not really a handicapper. He's a coder and what we call a trader. He makes his money by betting often both sides of a game, taking advantage of line movements and inefficient lines at books. What is valuable about his podcast is he has guests on that are deep in the gaming industry. He has bookmakers, professional sports bettors. And if you want to get into the mindset of what people that work for sports books are like, that's probably a good place to get that information. As far as his podcast goes, it's basically just an advertisement for him to get new beard accounts. He wants to hire people that have their own accounts that are, recreational bettors that he can use to place action so he can make his profits through his arbitrage and his other trading. It's not, I think, to me, it's not inherent to the way sports betting, the game is. Like I view it as a puzzle that I'm trying to solve, and we keep score with money. And his goal is to make money, and he says himself that he couldn't even tell you the starting players for a baseball team or a hockey team or a basketball team. But he's a smart guy, and he certainly loves him. Spanky loves him some Spanky. So if you like to hear a guy talk about himself, that's a podcast for you. And finally, Captain Jack Andrews' YouTube. Captain Jack is a pseudonym, but he has a YouTube channel which has sports betting advice. It's very clickbaity in my opinion, but he gives it to you straight. He gives you, he'll do a review of a sports book. He'll say, I bet at this sports book in person. I bet at this sports book online. Here's my review. He tells you if they'll limit you. He tells you what things to take advantage of, if there's promos or bonuses. He gives you good sports betting advice, things like hold percentages. From time to time, he'll have a live stream where he'll have people can chat with him and I think is very useful. He's actually working with Rufus Peabody on another website called unabated.com. I always want to say it's unabated sports, but it's just unabated.com. So that's designed to make you a better sports bettor. Obviously, right now it's in a beta stage, but I assume at some point they're going to charge for it. But he does have, you should check out his YouTube videos. He'll probably have one or two that will be helpful to you, unless you're an advanced sports bettor. And then finally, I'm going to tell you about a podcast that taught me more about sports betting than any other podcast that exists. And it's a very old podcast, and it was hosted by a gentleman from Chicago named Brian Bolick, and it's called the Bebo Knows Podcast. And I'm going to tell you, the quality of the sound is very amateur. I mean, it makes my show look like, a Hollywood production. However, he has over 100 episodes, and he had some of the smartest minds in sports betting from about 2013 to 2019 on his program. And they were a wealth of information. And I checked this morning, and they're all available on one of the main podcasting streaming sites. So if you are looking for sports betting information, I would go through those and listen to those in your spare time. He, I believe, had a gentleman went by the pseudonym Grooven Mahooven on his podcast more than once, and that man has passed away. But he helped a lot of people learn sports betting. When I talk about the sports bettors community, there's a point where people don't want to give away their edges, and they don't want to share. They don't want to make people better sports bettors because it'll make the market more efficient and it'll make them harder to find value. You got to be pretty good to get to that point. But for beginning bettors, Grooven helped a lot of people. Brian's podcast helped me from being a total noob to being what I consider to be an informed bettor. Not necessarily, I'm certainly not a professional, but getting beyond the basic square recreational bettor. And I think if you can get through the podcast, and he lived near a elevated train station, and there are a lot of trains in this podcast and some cats meowing from time to time, but a fabulous series if you ever get around to it. And props to Brian for doing that, putting that together. I still think he hosts a podcast every once in a blue moon. But props to you, Brian. Welcome to the Wisconsin Polka Hall of Fame. All right, let's move on to the sports this weekend. We got the NBA playoffs. Friday, the Clippers at the Mavs, +3. Basically, if you take away the one game where Doncic, Luka got hurt, this has been all Mavs. I like the Mavs here. The Clippers have Kawhi, Rondo, and George, and they need at least two of those guys to step up every game, and it seems like it's always only been one. Kawhi can't do it all himself. And I think the Mavericks are going to win this series. They might close it out tonight. The Bucks at the Nets, game 1 tomorrow. Nets -3.5. I think I said several weeks ago that Philly was going to get Atlanta or New York, and the Bucks and the Nets were going to get each other. I think this is going to be a tough series. I really do. I don't think you're going to see a high spread either way. 3.5. If that gets to 4 or 5, I'm all over the Bucks. Obviously, there could be a blowout, but a much tougher opponent than what the Nets had before. Hawks at the Sixers. Sixers -2.5. As long as they have Embiid and Simmons healthy, I feel like the Sixers are the favorite here. I would lean towards Philly in this case. Atlanta had pretty easy time with the Knicks. It's going to take, I think they're going to get a little more defense from the Sixers. I do see the Sixers going through in this series. And then on Monday, we have the Nuggets at the Suns, 5.5. Boy, that seems like a lot of points. Both of these teams off equal rest. The Nuggets are a very good team. Both of these teams I would consider to be underrated, even though they were high seeds. I obviously feel like this is going to be 6 or 7 games, assuming no injuries, of course. But you got to like the points in that scenario. So we'll have my picks in a little bit. Then let's go to the NHL, where I didn't do good at all last week. We got the Canadiens at the Jets. Canadiens won Game 1. They came out and scored 2 goals right away. And then they lost one of their forwards at the end of the game on the empty net goal and the hit by Scheifele. I assume Scheifele's suspended for this game. I do like the Jets to bounce back here. They are the more rested team. They just kind of have to, they had their 9 days off, and now they're back in it. The intensity's got to be up. I like the Jets. Avalanche at Golden Knights. The Avalanche have yet to lose a playoff game. Nobody goes undefeated through the playoffs. This is a great opportunity for the Golden Knights. I like them here at even money, assuming Fleury plays. The Hurricanes at the Lightning. The Hurricanes finally went to Mrazek, and it paid off for them with an overtime win in Game 3. And now they can even the series in Game 4 in Tampa Bay. I think they're a live dog at plus 138. These teams are very even. I know Tampa Bay won the first 2 games kind of handily, but this series is far from over. I do like the Hurricanes as the underdog. And then the Bruins at the Islanders. I don't know if you saw that last game, but the Nassau Coliseum was just electric. It's an amazing home ice advantage for the Islanders. They lost in overtime on a crappy call. I feel like they're also a live dog. Obviously, the perfection line can come in and take over a game. Islanders have to score first. If they score first, they're very difficult to play against with a lead. So they're going to have to score first to win some of these games. If they go down 2-0, it's probably over. So that's what I think about the NHL. And we got 2 races to talk about. The NASCAR at Sonoma. Chase Elliott obviously is the best road course driver in NASCAR. He's plus 225. I think this is his race to lose. Truex is the second best road course driver in NASCAR. He's starting 19th. They don't have qualifying this year. Kyle Larson, who has dominated the last 4 or 5 races, he was competitive in the last road course. He's plus 800. Denny Hamlin starts 3rd, I think, and he's 10-1. And William Byron, I think, starts 4th, and he is 14-1. He is a good overall driver. He's one of those drivers that can adapt to all different kinds of courses. I think this is Elliott's race to lose. I don't feel like spreading out my money on this race. I feel like he's at a supreme advantage here. It's his race to lose. Maybe Larson would be game, but I would be very surprised unless there's some weird caution pit stop strategy. I would be very surprised to see Truex in front by the end of the race. And then finally, the Azerbaijan Grand Prix. And this is a race that was won the last 2 times by Mercedes. And Max Verstappen has been bet heavy down to minus 110. He won the Monaco Grand Prix, and Mercedes had an awful day. They had an awful qualifying day. I feel like they bounced back. Lewis Hamilton at plus 250 is pretty juicy odds, and I don't think I could pass that up. I've been riding him all year. He's won 3 times out of 5 races. And Valtteri Bottas has he won in 2018, and Hamilton won in 2019. So they're the last 2 winners of this race. And Max Verstappen has not won this race. Obviously, Red Bull's coming off a great race. They're going to have to make more intense pit stops than, Monaco. There's almost no passing. So the fact that Ferrari crashed out and Bottas retired and Hamilton was stuck in 7th, he didn't really have any competition. So I really like Hamilton here. Qualifying is tomorrow morning. We'll know a lot more then, but expect Mercedes to be right up front. I just think that's value you can't pass up. So let's wrap it up right at 12 o'clock. before I get too sweaty, here's my picks. I'm going to take Chase Elliott, 1 unit, plus 225 to Win and Sonoma. Somebody else could do it, but road courses, you got to stick with him. He has been dominant. The only one he had trouble with was Daytona, which is a very narrow course. Lewis Hamilton, plus 250 at Azerbaijan. I think he's very determined to take over the championship standings lead again. So look for Lewis Hamilton to go to the wall and win this race. I'm going to take the Islanders at home, money line plus 125. I'm going to take Vegas at home, money line plus 100 to finally beat Colorado. And the Mavericks tonight, money line to close out the LA Clippers. And Kawhi's going to have to take the team on his back because Rondo hasn't done enough. Paul George hasn't done enough. So if Luka plays, I look for the Mavs to close it out. They're getting 3 points if you want to play it on the spread. So that's going to do it. Thank you for spending your Friday with me. I hope you get some winners this weekend. We're going to have real hot weather here in the Finger Lakes. I hope you stay cool. Enjoy yourself. Enjoy this fine weather. And we'll be back with another episode next week. So let me play the outro music for you. And let's go get some winners, folks. Take care, everybody.